Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the MitsuTimes podcast. Today, my very special guest is Mr. Chris Raymond, aka Ludacris from DSMtuners.com. How are you today, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's an honor to get you on here, and I know DSM Tuners has been a pillar of the community that I hold so near and dear to my heart. So, I want to say, first off, thank you for all of your hard work over the many, many years that you've been doing this.
Well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And, Chris, I want to start off by just telling us, who you are, where you're from, and kind of, your personal background.
Yeah. I live out here outside of Sacramento in Northern California with my family. I got two daughters, two teenage daughters who at this point, they're at the age where they don't want to hang out with us anymore. So starting to get back some extra time to do some things finally in life.
Chris, let's instead of a DeLorean, let's hop back into the 91G with the flux capacitor and go back in time to the beginning of DSM Tuner. What inspired you to create this one? I hate calling it a forum because it's so much more. What inspired you to create DSM Tuners?
Well, it's funny. I was managing communities for a while back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And at the time, my my wife now, fiance at the time, owned a 91 GSX. So the 91 Eclipse that I had starting out was actually my wife's car when we got together. And I was back then, funny enough, searching for an F-body Camaro just because my buddy had one and it seemed like a fun car. And then I started looking for, things that could be done to the GSX, and then stumbled across, the old sites, the VFAQ, Club DSM, started tweaking the car and turning up the boost a little bit. And, before you know it, it was my car before long. And she ended up buying another car to drive around because I essentially took that one over and pretty much decided that I wanted to build something around that car. There were some other, obviously the resources that were out there already. There was already DSM Talk at the time. But I knew I wanted to kind of try to build and add to what was out there. And that's kind of what got it started.
So, you talked about there kind of being a community or two out there already. What gap did you see in the DSM community that you knew another DSM Tuners as a community was meant to fill?
Right. Yeah. Well, so originally, the site actually started out as more of a product listing database. Think more of like product reviews or a product guide to show what products were actually available at the time for these cars. I noticed a lot of people in the forums are jumping in trying to find out what's available. What exhausts are available, what filters, what intercoolers, what turbos. That's one of the first things people were always jumping in and asking in the forum. So I saw that and I figured, hey, you know what? Maybe I can solve that problem by building out this database. and I did that, and then it turned into a photo gallery because that didn't exist. And then people were getting involved in helping out, and they were really receptive to what I was trying to do. But eventually that it turned into a forum as well. So I started adding more pieces to the site as it went on. And then before you know it, the forum just kept growing and, features kept getting added. And, it just started snowballing from that point. And I didn't really even expect the forum to be the main focus of the site until it was. And it just kind of ended up that way.
It's kind of like a never-ending project. There's always room for growth.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like what a lot of people, if you talk to any business owner or, anybody that started a company, they have one vision of what something's going to be when you start out. And then you start getting feedback, and you start getting, your customers or clients, or, in this case, members, they start giving their feedback and sharing what they're looking for, and how they can see it changing. And you pretty much just have to take what people are giving you and run with it, and start giving people what they're asking for. And so it just kind of turned into, well, okay, I can add a forum. I can do things a little bit differently. Let me try to see what might be useful. What features can I add? What can I focus on that it's just not out there? So, the idea was always try to, fill the needs and try to be innovative, try to build something that just doesn't really exist. So that's, and like you said, it's just like a car. It's a project that's never done, and there's always something else.
Well, back then when you were creating a more product catalog, did you envision that this DSM Tuners was going to be something special, or did it just grow to what it is, kind of organic?
I can't say that I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I know I know that I wanted to build something that made an impact. But I didn't really know what it would look like, and I didn't really know how big it would get, because, I mean, when you look at the DSM market and compare it to other markets, other car markets even, it's not necessarily a huge market. So I know that I wasn't really necessarily thinking that it was going to be something that blew up and just became massive. Um, but it did. I mean, it's been relatively big, bigger than I probably thought it would ever be. Um, and it, yeah, I can't say that I expected it to get that big. So
So that original '91 GSX, that car had so much, soul that it inspired this whole thing. Has that kind of been your DSM experience ever since?
yeah. So the funny thing about the car, I think, and I don't know if a lot of DSMers feel this way or not, but I think what I really loved about the car was that it had its these cars have always been seen as sleepers, right? They're not very showy, especially the first gens, right? They're not very showy. People don't really notice them. They and and I think that's what drew me to them. I liked that understated, that the ability to surprise people, right? Because they just don't know what it is.
For sure.
And I love that. And I think that's what always kind of connected me to these cars and this platform in general. Um, just the ability to do some tweaks and just make big power and just have a lot of fun with them. Um, this car started out, it was stock when I had it, when I got it. And, just doing the basic stuff with catback, air filter, boost controller, some springs and shocks, and it was a fun car for the street. And it, it surprised some people. And my friends were always, I remember going to, we would go to the road courses every year down at Buttonwillow, and I would take my car and my buddies would take theirs. And one had an E46 M3, another one had an old C4 Corvette, and another buddy had another Vet too. And so we'd always take our cars out, and this car would just, it would keep up and had its strengths where the people that owned the other cars, they were just always so surprised by what this car could do.
Right.
So, I love that. I've always loved that about these cars.
It's definitely one of my most favorite aspects of the DSM.
I think a lot of people are drawn to that, in this community.
So, Chris, thinking back to that time, you already kind of spoke on it a little bit, but I want to elaborate. How did the community first respond to DSM tuners?
Yeah, the response, it was a little slow in the beginning, but the response was always positive. I'd always have people reaching out, wanting to get involved and help out, and just do whatever they can. And that was really great, because it showed me that, hey, you know what, there is a need for this. There are people that kind of want to get involved and try to build out something different.
For sure.
And so, yeah, it was always positive. It kind of led me to, it's funny. It's I always think of MitsuTimes, right? Because back then, one of the first things I built out was a time slips and a dyno list, that was kind of based off of the user profile data,
Mm-hmm.
because the users could enter their time slip data and dyno data directly in their user profile. And then I started building lists off of that. And that was actually really cool up until the point where I had to change forum software, and that was no longer compatible with the new forum software. So that all kind of went away. I'm glad that you kind of have taken that on and kind of built out something that's more than what I could do with that system. So,
I just want to continue the legacy of DSM Times, because I know for me that website, DSM Tuners as well, but I would just, I would stay glued to that website for whatever reason. I didn't have a fast car, and I just wanted to see what the fast guys were doing.
right.
And that's why I, even the quarter mile list on DSM Tuners, you go, what is this person set up?
Right. And that's what I was really shooting for, was to try to keep it going, try to keep it dynamic, so that anytime anybody updated something, it would update the list, and then people could keep clicking in and seeing, well, what's their setup, what are they doing? It's never perfect, because it always relies on users to keep their stuff updated. But you do what you can. So, and the users, the members reacted to that really well, and people were constantly in there updating their information, and it worked great, but as you know, with software, when software changes, it changes everything. So,
For the good, the worst. Chris, thinking back, do you remember like the first big traffic spike where you thought, okay, well, this is starting to really become something?
I don't know that there was like any like huge traffic spikes that stand out. I do remember just kind of watching the membership grow, every month, and it kept growing and it kept growing, and I can tell you that it became an issue with hosting, just because the server would start crashing, and so I had to keep. I think I knew by the time I moved hosting, like by the third time, to another server that could handle the traffic and the just the usage, that okay, yeah, this is this is going to be bigger than I thought it was going to be, and I should probably start looking into maybe getting see if I can find some companies to sponsor and help pay the costs of this, because hosting is starting to get really expensive here. So, yeah, I think that was probably about, the site launched in 2001, November, I think it was 2001. And I think within 6 months, it was actually doing way more than I thought it would. And by the end of the first year, it was actually, I think I'd probably already moved the site at least 2 times by then to another host. Yeah. Um, well, you got to think too back then that the software wasn't as refined back then. The forum software, running older versions of vBulletin, and whatever I was using before that. I think it was PHP Nuke or something else. But you're still the software is. Oh, there's always bugs in the software that cause issues and the site's crashing, and then by that time we're all also dealing with server attacks. You get the DDoS attacks, denial of service, and having to mitigate those attacks. And yeah, I guess by the time I got hit with the first attack, I thought, oh man, I must have made it here, right? Because if there's people out there trying to attack the site, man,
to get noticed.
We're big time now, right?
Well, other than having to get a larger and larger server, was there any other growing pains for the website expanding as quickly as it did?
Yeah, just a lot of the same that you see in any community, really. Trying to keep some type of order and developing an identity around what type of behavior you're going to want to allow and what you want to promote as far as a standard goes. That was always challenging. That's always been challenging, and you see that everywhere. You see that in Facebook groups now. Even, I mean, there's just trying to walk that fine line between promoting promoting good, just good, healthy discourse, but also letting people debate stuff and trying to get down to the nitty gritty of any topic.
Sure.
It's always going to be a challenge, no matter what community you're running. There's different personalities. There's always going to be conflict, and you always have to try to manage it as best you can without being overbearing with the rules or being too lenient, because there's definitely different philosophies on all of that. And I've tried to do it the best I think it should be done, and definitely have people that disagree with that, and I get it. But that's you do what you can, and you try to just live with those decisions.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So, Chris, has the I think back to a lot of the Facebook groups and kind of how people treat one another on occasions. I'm not saying this is all the time, so please don't if you're listening, don't take this as all DSM people are like this. But was the site plagued with trolls in the beginning?
We definitely had trolls. I mean, there was definitely there were definitely, well, and you got to think back too, right? I mean, back then there was DSM Talk, or an existing forum. There was around. I think it was around about a year before I started DSM Tuners, maybe 2. Wasn't around that long, I don't think. So you already had an existing forum, so there was kind of a natural rivalry between the two forums, and so you'd have people going over there, talking trash to in that forum. You had people from that forum coming talking trash. You had an ABR who, we had some people that would come in and just troll users, try to see if they can get banned and see how quickly it would happen, and kind of just have fun. Basically, it was just entertainment. So yeah, there was definitely some of that. And funny enough, years later, like NABR is not around anymore, but I've had some of those members reach out to me years later and apologize for the stuff that they did back then, and actually, thank me for sticking with it, and they jumped back in and would participate, and maybe they didn't stay around for a long time, but they did, and they would contribute, and that was actually really cool. It was really cool to hear from guys like that who actually turned around and were really respectful of what I was doing, what the members, what the moderators were trying to do. So yeah, that was really nice.
Well, Chris, I think back to when I first discovered DSM tuners, and I think holy cow, here's a community of people from all over the world who have already gained and gathered the information that I'm looking for to make my DSM faster. So I'm just curious if you can think back to when the forum part of DSM tuners first started. What were some of the most frequently asked questions now that people have a place to get this information?
Yeah. Well, I think we still have some threads that have been pinned and stickied in certain parts, probably in the newbie forum and various other places. But I would have to say off the top of my head, how to vent my blow off valve so that it makes a loud noise when I shift. That was probably by far the one that annoyed everybody the most. There was idle surge questions all the time. And, so just trying to pin answers where you could to show that, hey, there's ways that you can find how to address this stuff. That was always a constant issue. But another one would be fluid for what kind of fluid to make the shifting smoother. BG synchro shift or synchro mesh, or whatever the fluids were that everybody was always responding with. What turbo should I go with? What are the first mods? What is fuel cut? And what do you do about that? What mods should I do for a 10-second car? And that was always a running joke with like some of the moderators and the veterans, because it's like, well, if you're asking the question about what mod you should do for a 10-second car, maybe you should go through and try to build a 13-second car first and see how that goes. But hey, I think that's just, people get excited. They get these cars, they kind of briefly read what can be done, kind of like, we all went through it. And so they start just jumping to this and that and trying to figure out, how to do what. And yeah, you kind of have to just train them on, well, here, why don't you read through this first? Here's some threads. Here's some articles, that have been posted. Read through the VFAQ, trying to train them to just read through what so many others before them have gone through. And it's not easy. You get people that get a little pissed off when you tell them, because there's some people in the forum that don't say it so nicely. Use the search. Did you search for that? And it just becomes, well, okay, how can I take it upon myself to then try to make the user interface a little bit easier for some of these people that are just starting out, to try to make it less contentious when they go in and ask some of these questions. So that's what I've always tried to do, is try to address a lot of the frequently asked questions by making the user interface easier to find the answers to that stuff.
And you're kind of dealing with a two-sided sword here, because not only do you have to deal with people who are new to DSMs, but also people who are new to using a forum system.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, funny enough, back then it wasn't so hard. I think, if anything, I've had more people in the last 5 years ask me more questions about how to use a forum than I did 20 years ago.
I believe that.
Because, everything is so different now. Everybody uses apps. And so the user interface is just not quite the same. So yeah, actually had to change things up and change design, change the user journey a little bit, to kind of, pivot from everything that's been designed before, just to address that. So
a little bit more of a, like you said, like a user-friendly layout compared to everything else that we're using these days.
yeah, well, and yeah, obviously, going trying to design for mobile first, and make that the priority. I've worked on apps, for the forum, and using like Tapatalk, which that was a that was a huge undertaking, and then kind of it didn't go the right way. So having to take that off and then build out other ways to make it more mobile friendly. I'm still looking at another option to build possibly another app, but there's no easy answer to that really for a forum, because it doesn't really function the same way most of the social media apps do. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, in your opinion, what makes the DSMers different from other tuner communities?
Um, I think there's, well, having not been a part of too many other communities, I mean, it's hard to know what is unique about the DSM community without having a solid comparison. But I will go back to the idea that I think a lot of DSMers are attracted to cheap horsepower, first of all, right? A car that is relatively inexpensive to modify when you compare it to the other platforms out there, and just that sleeper effect, right? You got cars out there that are super flashy, and these ones are really understated. You just surprise a lot of people, especially when you're showing up to the drag strip and you pull up next to a car that has no idea, and it's so fun watching a DSM out there just run a 10 and nobody expected it, right? It's that just that sleeper aspect, I think, that is different. I do think I would say that I think there's a lot of people that are very, very helpful in this community. Just from what I've seen, and people that'll, you got people that are jumping in cars and driving to go help somebody tune their car, offering people parts, and I think that might be more of a general. Maybe that's more of an aspect of racing. When people are at the track, going out to the track, you see people showing up with parts to help somebody that's broken down. But I'd like to think that that's also one of the differentiators for this community when you compare it to others, is just that genuine willingness to help another owner, whether it be just in the forum, online, answering questions, also offering up knowledge. We've had so many members over the years just writing up, step-by-step tutorials on how to do something, really in depth, with some pretty high tech, as far as technical knowledge goes, pouring it all into it, and not really expecting anything in return. And again, maybe that's found in a lot of other communities, but I know it's been a big part of this one.
I agree, for sure. Well, Chris, one thing that I had, I posted some places online for people to send in questions to ask you. And one of the questions that people were sending was, you've been doing this for so long. DSM Tuners has been around for so long. How have you seen the DSM scene evolve since the early 2000s, since DSM Tuners started?
Yeah. That's everybody that was around in the early 2000s. I mean, you had a lot of racers back then that were doing big things. I mean, big things for back then, right? Cars that were first they were running 12s, and they were running 11s, and they're running 10s. And so there was a lot of emphasis on the racing and just chasing records, putting down power, getting fast numbers at the track, and then Fast and Furious came out and kind of changed things quite a bit in this industry, and then everything was then you had body kits everywhere and nitrous and well, there was nitrous before that, but you know what I mean. And that's when the blow off valves started getting really loud. So that kind of led to the anti Fast and Furious sentiment, and you've got people. It was always about the ricers and just it that kind of shifted into there was a lot of change in style and aesthetics, but I think there was still an underlying theme was the performance. That was still there, and there were people that were still focused on that, and that just kept going. Right? It went from you're battling Camaros and Mustangs to now you're battling everybody, and then you had the Evos and the WRXs and the GTRs after that, that started taking over. But these cars are still going fast. You got DSMs that were still chasing records, right, going down, putting down really fast times. So I think the biggest changes that you see how things were evolved were, you had the style trends that kind of changed with the body kits, the paint, the stance movement, the hella flush trends that, in some ways are still around today. But that's changed. But the focus on performance has really led to, technology changes and innovation. And, there was a shift away from the bigger aftermarket companies that everybody knew that used to make parts for these cars. Well, they kind of stopped making parts for the cars because they moved on to other platforms that were, probably more profitable. So, and probably higher volume. And so that opened the door to smaller shops and fabricators. And we've had an influx of really, just pretty good, really good fabricators, really talented people getting into the scene, making some great parts. And they've kind of taken the place of a lot of the bigger parts manufacturers that used to. Selection was pretty limited to begin with, just because these cars weren't Honda Civics, they weren't Integras, they weren't Mustangs, they weren't Camaros, all those big, high volume platforms. They're the ones that got all the great parts. We just got onesie twosie stuff here and there. But it's been nice to see the fabricators step in and keep things going and really continuing the development, and making it possible for some of these and a lot of the guys that are going fast, they're the ones driving it. They're the ones making the parts or doing the development for it, and working with fabricators and pushing it and continuing to push it. So I think that's kind of changed the way things have been done in this community over the years, which is really cool to see.
So, this next question is something that when I was, thinking of some questions to ask, the one that I thought of almost immediately because when I got the tragic news that Mr. Joe Bucci had passed away, one of the first things I did was go to DSM Tuners and just kind of relive his forum responses, and that's before I ever met Joe in person. I obviously knew him on Tuners, and it just made me want to know from you what has been some of your favorite builds or member stories from the site over all these years.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's definitely a lot of them. I mean, I've I was always partial to road race builds just because that was kind of what I was into. So I paid a lot of attention to Greg Collier's road race build with his laser. He did a lot of road races in Southern California. I actually went down and met him at a race and got to see his setup in person, which was really nice. But there's a lot of builds. I mean, we got to watch Boost in Performance documented a lot of their first Red Demon build on the site, which was really fun to watch as they because they started doing some really really big stuff that people didn't expect to see. Got to see Aaron Gregory do his build on his 1G, and everybody knows what that car looks like now, but watching it change from the early days to what it's turned into, that was always good to watch. And I think, like you said, Joe's build, just to see how his car changed over time. There's a lot of them. Yeah, I remember hearing the news about Joe too. It's you get to see, you watch the journey for some of these people and see them do some of this stuff, and it's inspiring. You get to kind of follow along and follow through their journey, and like you said, the one of the cool things about forums in general is when something tragic happens, what's the first thought? Yeah, you jump in and you go back and try to follow along in their journey, almost as if to try to get to know them a little better, or learn something that you didn't know about them before, right? That maybe you didn't pay attention to before. It's going through build threads and stuff. You learn a lot. You get to know people quite a bit, and it's really cool to see some of these builds that have gone on over the span of 10 plus years. Some of them are still going. You don't really get that anywhere else. It's yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, to answer your question, there's a lot of build threads that I've kind of followed over the years, and
Yeah.
it's a big part of what makes the site so special, really.
100%. And I mean, I know we'll compare to social media later on, but one of my favorite parts of the forum is go back to using Joe as an example. I'm not going to see Joe post anymore on Facebook, but I can see where he posted on the forum.
Right.
And, it's almost like he's still here. I think that's a big part of what makes that so special.
Oh, I agree.
Well, Chris, after all these years, thinking back to 2021, what do you think that the community has gained the most from DSM?
I think what it's gained the most is kind of what you just touched on. It's kind of in a way like a centralized hub for the chronicling of the platform. The history of this platform, and who's come and gone. What have they done? What were their contributions? What did they do? Who you kind of I mean, you can ask questions about that stuff and people will tell you in their own words, but this, the site makes it easy for anybody to just jump in and go through it and learn who's who and who's done what. It's maybe not as easy to know what their names are because everybody uses a username, and I've always pushed people to try to list their first names at least and try to make it easier for everybody to get to know each other that way. But it's not that hard to figure it out. I mean, you kind of go through and really dive deep into the history of it all and learn basically who's doing what and where they came from. I think one of the coolest parts of it is some of these people have gone through and turned this hobby, this lifestyle into a career. You got a lot of good fabricators like the Morrisons. You've got Paul Volk. You've got several of these guys, doing tuning. They started out just like everybody else, in the forum, learning stuff, paying attention, building stuff out, testing, doing their own thing. And then they took the jump and are selling stuff and are actually doing development and pushing the platform forward. You see them on social media because they're over there too. They're talking with everybody over there, but it's pretty it's pretty wild to me to kind of see where some of these people started out and to know that we were part of the journey in the forum to where they are now. It's awesome.
It's funny that you mention people using their usernames because I know going to the shootout for so many years, I always thought, man, I wish people would put their DSM Tuners username like a sticker on their shirt. It's like, okay, yeah, I know you.
It's funny you bring that up. I actually just changed, working on changing over to a new apparel printing, like a supplier, basically. And one of the things they offer is personalization, finally. So it's I haven't tried it. I've got somebody I've got to try it myself and see how easy it is. But it should be possible now, finally, for anybody to do it. Order online, enter their username, and then I can actually, set it up so that it'll get printed on the shirt when they order it. So the tough part is I haven't been able to be in a position to make it so I can order inventory and do these things one off. So I've always had to use a print on demand company, and they're just now finally coming around and making it easier for stuff like that to be possible. So it's coming.
Love it.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by EvoSpec Performance. EvoSpec Performance specializes in complete plug-and-play, drop-in ready fuel systems that support mild to wild setups ranging from 500 horsepower all the way to 1,200 plus horsepower. They carry complete DSM and Evo titanium hardware kits. Compared to factory hardware, EvoSpec's titanium kits are 50% lighter, stronger, as well as rust and corrosion resistant. They offer custom billet machine parts that focus on increasing performance, efficiency, weight reduction, and give that unique custom finished look that you expect. Find out more about their products and services at evospecperformance.com.
Well, Chris, I know this is another one that a lot of people had input on. So with the rise of Facebook groups, Reddit, Instagram, what role does DSM Tuner still play within the community?
I think it's really just a matter of the same thing from the very beginning, trying to provide value for the platform in ways that other social media apps or communities, whether it be Reddit or Instagram or Facebook, just trying to provide value where they don't. What is it that they do well, and what is it does the forum do well, and try to find ways to keep the value there. Yeah, whether that's focusing on the build threads, whether that's keeping the information organized, trying to find ways to make information easy to find, and using whatever technology is available to try to make improvements to make it better. Really, the challenging part is, I'm one guy. I'm one guy competing for attention with, billion-dollar companies that are building out these social media apps that are, essentially built around social engineering to try to keep people, addicted in their ecosystem. So it's not easy. It's not easy, but I think it's still important, because there's information that is available, and people are asking some of the same questions. It's just, how do we make the information easier for people to find so that, it's readily available and easy to share among everybody. So
I agree 1,000%, because, I could search a problem that I'm having with my car on Facebook, and God only knows if I'm going to find the answer or not. But if I go to tuners and type in what I'm, the problem I'm having, I'm almost certainly going to find a very clear path to someone who had the same problem I did and what they did to fix it.
Well, and I can, we can be honest about it. It's you don't always find it right away, and sometimes the search on the forum doesn't work great. But you know what I tell people? It's, if you can't find it using the search, there's ways that you can tweak the search tool, the search feature on the site to find things. And I've got guides on how to do that. And if you can't do that, try Google. Search the problem on Google and add DSM tuners to the end. You'll get different results sometimes.
Bring it right.
It's not hard. I'm telling you, sometimes I'll sit there just for the hell of it. I'll jump on Facebook and I'll find questions, and I'll have Facebook open and I'll have the forum open, and sometimes Google, and I'll just do searches for what they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll find 3 threads quickly and I have to quickly go through and make sure that they're not dead end threads and they didn't, or they're empty, no replies or something. But I'll go in there, quickly vet them and make sure that I can share these links. And here, let me post those links as an answer to that question.
Right. That's another thing that it goes so underappreciated. Not only can I search, even go to Google and bring it up on tuners, but then I specifically look for one that says resolve. Okay, so now I know that this one has the answer I'm looking for.
Right. Or some variation to it that helps you kind of, opens the door to another idea that you didn't have about the problem, that, hey, maybe I can try that. Maybe I can do that. Or, there's so many avenues that you can take that will get you to where you need to be, that it's just, it just takes a little time and effort, really. That's all it takes. But yeah, the funny thing I run into on Facebook sometimes is, I'll be on there and I'll have the question that somebody's asked. I've got it open, right? I go and I'm like, oh, here, I've got 2 threads. I just need to find one more. Let me find one more. 3 is always good, right? It's always good. If I can find 3 to 5, man, that'll be really useful to this person. Then I'll jump back on Facebook, and what happens? The feed refreshes, and I can't find that question anymore.
Yep.
I don't even know where it was. Was it in a group? Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, and how easy is it to find something on Facebook when it refreshes? Awesome. Not that easy. I don't even know where it was. So it's like, oh, well, shoot. I was going to try to help that person, but oh well. Just wasted my time.
Do you think that we've lost anything, Chris, by moving away from the traditional forums?
I mean, I would have to say that forums are still being used daily, first of all.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe not by, the masses like they once were, but they're still being used. And some view them as dead, and, that, yeah, I get it. but I get why they would say that. But I think what's being lost with all of this is the the reduction of long form editorial, posts and contributions from people who really know what they're doing, people that have learned over the years, all the information that you would like to sit down and ask them questions about. Some of those people have been known to write long form posts about like articles, guides, how-tos, all these tutorials. And they would do it like not for recognition, not for likes, not to build up followers, but a genuine desire to help others in the community and try to push the platform forward as a result. I think we're losing out on that, as more time passes.
For sure.
We for social media, especially like Facebook and Instagram, it's either visual or it's really, one or two sentences most of the time. And yeah, sure, that's not always the case. There's definitely people posting some useful long-term or long-form posts, but that's not the norm, and it's starting to slow down more and more. And I've got my own opinions on why that is, but it's just something that it's really sad to watch. I think part of it is just the structure and the functionality of social media platforms. There's just it doesn't make sense because you don't really see a lot of the same depth in the discussions, just because the way they structure the collapsed replies and everything. But I think also is just some people are just tired of dealing with people that don't want to take advice either.
Yeah.
So, what's the point of putting all this effort into this when, people aren't going to follow it. And they're just going to ask the question anyways. That I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, it's just, and unfortunately, if that continues, you're gonna see a lot less quality information available, that you can search for and find.
For sure.
I mean, for as much as social media makes people feel connected, it creates a pretty big disconnect between information and people that are trying to find it.
No one's posting on social media for the love of the game like they did on tuners when they're trying to tell you about a solution to a problem.
They might be. I can't say that nobody is, but I can find it if you just jump into the tech article section and find some of the write-ups that people have posted. I mean, these are like 1,000-word posts, maybe more. And sometimes the articles span over several posts. You just don't see that very often anymore. We still have people doing it in the forum, posting articles and stuff, but it's not like it was, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago. It's slowed down quite a bit, and that's really unfortunate.
But I wonder how much of that is less about social media and more about just the platform as a whole being, the younger generation. I don't know. I feel like if you're into DSMs now, you were probably into DSMs forever. No one's just now getting.
Well, I mean, I think people that are just getting into DSMs now or within the last few years, I just don't think that behavior is the same anymore. People are jumping into, I think the idea of being part of a community now is to just chat online. It's not necessarily to give back so much. It's not so much to push the platform forward or kind of contribute to a resource so much as it is just like I said, just to chat with other people. people's idea of a community has changed over the years. So yeah, I think that does have a lot to do with it. It's just the behavior has changed, the expectations have changed, and it doesn't help that everything is done mostly on mobile now, because that makes it difficult to type up a long form tutorial on something.
Sure.
You do kind of have to do that on a laptop or a PC or something. It's not as easy to do on a phone. So I think just there's a lot of things that contribute to it, but I think deep down, I think it has a lot to do with just people's idea of what community means.
Now, Chris, this next question I actually took from one of your thread posts that I really was intrigued and kind of got lost in multiple pages of everyone's opinion. So, what is your take personally on how car culture has changed in the social media era?
Well, it kind of piggybacking off the last one. I think it was a little bit, again, people's idea of what community is. I think car culture is kind of taken on more of a, I don't know what you could, maybe like, it kind of looks like marketing a lot now, people marketing themselves,
Mm-hmm.
people marketing in companies and products. There's a lot of marketing that takes place on all social media platforms, whether it's somebody is trying to build up a following or, again, companies marketing products everywhere and trying to build up their own micro communities to try to share their messaging with. It's really a constant fight for attention spans, and the content and the quality of the discourse that you see kind of reflects that. Everything is visual, everything is quick snippets. It's more about trying to wow people, to stay relevant, than just to connect, with other people with the same cars. It's I don't know. At least that's what I've noticed a lot of.
It's more about showing off than it is about a brotherhood of a community.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Everybody's always concerned with going viral and trying to make a name for himself and for something. It's, I don't know. Maybe I know I sound old, but it just has a different feel these days.
Yeah, I not to be too psychological, but I think that Facebook is a big reason that a lot of us feel alone and depressed.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Well, again, like I was saying before, it's designed to make people feel connected, and they design it in a way that, I mean, they spend millions and millions of dollars to make it addicting, to make you feel connected, and without it, you just kind of feel disconnected, or even with it, you feel disconnected. I mean, it's just, that's just how it is.
All right, Chris. So, with all that being said, if the forums die off completely, what does the DSM community lose as a whole?
Well, I mean, just DSM tuners. If you're looking at DSM tuners, that has close to 500,000 threads and over 4 million posts. I think there's probably close to about 2,000 tech article write-ups. If you're looking at build threads, we've got probably about 10,000 build threads in there, and I think about 20, maybe close to 20,000 DSM vehicle profiles posted with photos and mod lists and all of that. So that's a lot of history just for this one website to be lost. The chronicling of everything that everybody's talked about in the forum that whole time, and that's just this forum. Then you still have DSM Talk. You still got I think there's a few other smaller ones that are still around. It might just be DSM Talk though. But if those disappeared, you would lose a massive amount of information. I would say, we'd lose a lot of the legacy, of the platform. I mean, wouldn't you think that's that's a good amount of information being lost?
I would equate losing the forums to like if your city library burned down and then the only information you could get was like at the gas station.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, I don't know how you build that back up. I don't know that you can. The apps out there right now don't make good information repositories, so it would take somebody really dedicated to try to rebuild that, which is tough for this platform because, as we all know, this is not a huge platform. I can't even imagine how many of these cars are still even on the road. So it's not a good it's not a good business proposition if you look at it that way. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm still surprised. I mean, you got to look at all the fabricators, the people who have businesses in this community right now. They're not doing it because they're making tons of money. I mean, maybe some of them are doing pretty well, but it's not the platform you get into to be wealthy. That's for sure. People are doing this because they love the platform. I don't think Busher's putting on the shootout because it's a huge moneymaker, right? I mean, it's not the case. He's
Right.
finding ways to try to keep it going. That's just how it is. And you do what you can to keep it going because you have a deep connection to this platform. And I think that's what a lot of us do.
I agree. So, Chris, how much of your time is spent managing the website day to day?
It ranges a lot. Sometimes I'll only spend a few minutes. Sometimes it's a few hours. It really just depends on what I'm working on, what's happening on the site. Upgrading the server or the forum software can take hours and hours on end. And I don't really keep track of how much time I spend interacting with members because I spend a lot of time doing that.
Mhm.
So it's probably at least a couple hours a day, on and off. Sometimes more, sometimes a little less. And then there's days that I'll go just checking emails and just loading the site, just really quickly just to make sure everything's good. But yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm spending these days is just trying to work on some development of custom features, doing outreach, interacting with members and trying to keep people engaged, trying to find, good topics for people to create content around, whether it's me or whether it's, some of the veteran members, just chatting with them about ideas and how to keep things improving, keep things going in the right direction.
I feel like your time that you spend on the website isn't appreciated enough. So that's why I wanted to add in these questions because I think people just think it's kind of hands off.
Yeah, no, not really. That's yeah, no, it can be really time consuming. Now, with that said, there's a lot of unfortunately, there's tons of forums out there that are, they're run with nobody in charge. The people who started them either kind of gave up on them and they're just, just running with nobody maintaining them, or they got bought out because I'd say probably 99% of the forums that you come across out there are owned by one of two or three large forum networks that run them in a way to where there's no real vision for them. Their sole purpose is to drive traffic in order to run ads and in a way kind of bleed them dry. At least if you paid attention to any of them, I've watched some of them. Just some really good forums that used to be really big back in the day are kind of ghost towns now just because they got bought out. But yeah, I think those forums are kind of what gives forums a bad name in general, unfortunately. But I also know a lot of forum owners who are just as engaged as I am in their own forums, and even more so. Some of them are, some of them do this type of thing, full time, and the businesses they run allow them to be involved, and they've turned it into a bigger business. Obviously, they don't focus on the DSM market, but they've been kind of doing what I do in a way to kind of keep forums alive. I think there's not a lot of us left, I would say, but the ones that are involved, like I am, you can tell when you jump into a forum which ones are owned by enthusiasts and which ones aren't.
Yeah. Definitely, I see what you're talking about with the ones that have been bought out. Like as soon as you click on them, the pop-up ads just start attacking you.
Yeah, well, and if you're not logged into DSM Tuners, you'll see pop-up ads. You'll see ads kind of pop up all over the place too. The difference is I make it very clear, hey, log in, and a lot of these ads are going to go away. It's way easier when you log in, and I do that on purpose. So,
well, Chris, how has running DSM Tuners impacted your person?
You learn a lot when you run forums. The obvious impact for me has been the relationships, just meeting some of the people that I've met, watching people go through what they go through with these cars. It's pretty inspiring in a lot of ways. Some of the builds that these people do, it's been really fulfilling in that sense. I don't know if I'm a huge introvert. I'm not the type that everybody stands around and listens to at gatherings. I'm always the quiet guy over there in the corner. That's always been me. So this is actually, doing this for so many years has almost been like therapy for me. It keeps me involved. It keeps me interacting. And it pushes me to do things that I probably wouldn't normally do. So it's been really cool for me. Especially just seeing people from different backgrounds, that probably wouldn't ordinarily come together, hang out and do the stuff that makes other people, it just inspires other people.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, in that sense, it's been really fulfilling for me.
I'm really glad to hear that. So, Chris, what would you say to someone who says that forums are just dead and pointless?
Well, I'd probably say so are manual transmissions. So is the future of gas-powered cars. So are books and libraries. Hell, to some people, so is the DSM platform, right? I mean, it all depends on who you're talking to, and it's all about perspective, right? I mean, I thought Craigslist was dead, but hell, I just sold our car through Craigslist a couple years ago.
Nope.
Because I figure everybody's using Facebook Marketplace now, right? Well, I couldn't get the car to sell through there. I got plenty of scammers reaching out to me, but no bites. So I jumped on Craigslist and sold my car. There's plenty of forums that are dead or inactive or poorly managed. But that doesn't mean all forums are dead, right? DSM Tuners obviously isn't as active as it was 10 to 15 years ago, for sure. But the site, this site still surprisingly gets anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 visitors every single day. If I'm looking through the logs, it's which is still kind of funny because again, there's not a lot of these cars still around, but people are searching for this stuff and they do come through the forums.
Right.
People are looking for information, and if the traffic was, totally gone, I would agree with everybody. But no, it's the traffic's there. People are searching for the information. I just think that when something isn't the biggest trend, anymore, I think a lot of people are quick to say that it's dead. And people tend to believe that everything outside of their world, their ecosystem that they've kind of built for themselves, if it doesn't live in there, it's dead to them, or it's not important. It's in a way, it's kind of a trendy way to look at things, right? But we still have 15 to some 20 plus year members who are still in the forums almost every day. Mm-hmm. They believe in what the forum represents for the community. And I'm hoping we can get some more coming back. Maybe some veterans that are still wrenching on these cars that haven't been in here, in the forum for a little while. I'm looking for ways to make improvements and I'm always listening to feedback, so it's anybody that wants to get involved can get involved. If people have anytime I see people, make statements or complain about something that's not working well in the forums, like I always come across threads that are dead end threads, and it's like, oh, I spent all this time, and then just to find out, 5 pages later that there was no answer. Well, you know what? Get involved. Mm-hmm. Report the thread to a moderator. Log in if you want to help out to kind of maybe delete some of those threads or flag them, or try to help us organize the information better, and clean out the stuff that isn't necessary, to make it so that the next time you search for something, you find it faster. By all means, reach out to me. Get involved. It takes a community, to get a resource like this, to keep it clean, to keep it going.
Right.
There's many ways that people can get involved, and I always encourage it. But again, the common behavior these days is people don't. A lot of people don't, unfortunately. So, but I'm super grateful for the ones that do.
I feel like maybe it's just like this kind of day and age thing. We just want to be negative rather than do something to actually help.
Yeah, and there are plenty of people out there who they want to point out what's cool and what's not. It's like, it's just kind of how things are in our society. But that's fine. You can't argue with everybody. Everybody's got their own world, their own truth, their own reality. So, and you can't talk to everybody. So you just have to talk to the ones that kind of share that vision, and keep them engaged. So that's really all you can do.
Well, Chris, although I imagine most people listening to this probably have a tuner's account already, let's say that I'm listening. I don't have a tuner's account, but I want to get involved. What can I do?
The quickest way is to just go to the website, go to the homepage, go to any page really, and there will be a register link at the very top. You might even get a pop-up that'll ask you to join. All you need is a valid email address to confirm and receive notifications from the site, preferably one that doesn't involve a Yahoo account, just because Yahoo, for some reason, hates us. They tend to block any notifications that come from the system. So I'll have people waiting for a confirmation email, and they'll never receive it. So sure enough, half the time it's a Yahoo address. Gmail tends to work really well. Don't have a lot of issues with Gmail addresses. So yeah, it's really simple. Sign up, choose your username, enter your email, fill out some of the stuff that we try to put in place to keep the spammers and scammers and bots out, and confirm your email address, and you're in. If you had an old account that you used to have many years ago, and you can't get into it because you don't remember what email address you used or whatever the case, I always tell people, just send me a note, email me. There's a contact us form on the site that you can send me a note. Let me know what your username was and what you think your email address was. I could try to dig it up and confirm that information and try to get you access to it again.
Well, what if I don't have a 2G? Let's say I'm a Colt guy or a Evo guy. How can I still be part of the community?
Oh, we've got plenty of members who don't even own DSMs in there anymore. They hang out to share knowledge and chat with others and shoot the shit. If you have anything that's 4G 63, there's people in there doing the same thing. We've got, I think in the vehicle profiles, I set up different categories. I even have a totally non-DSM category that people will upload profiles of whatever other cars or vehicles they own. There's actually a 4G 63 swapped section where you'll find Colts, you'll find Mighty Maxes, you'll find, plenty of other, cars that are not technically a DSM in there. But yeah, everybody's welcome. And there's a lot of people like that in there that are just hanging out just to hang out.
All right, so Chris, let's talk about the benefits of being a member of DSM Tuners. We've already talked about, not getting the pop-ups when you first start, but what else is there? Why should I become part of the community?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, like you said, the ads, it cuts down on the ads. I would say, from a philosophical standpoint, you're helping build the legacy. You're growing the history. You're chronicling. You're part of something that is going to go far beyond once you're done with the platform. And I don't know if some people will see that as a benefit or not, but I think it's important to some people, right? You're helping preserve the legacy of the platform. I think you'll find that you'll get involved with some deeper discussions than you might not get anywhere else. In-depth technical discussions. You'll be chatting with some people that you'll be able to quickly learn more about them. Like you might find that somebody who's answering your questions or responding to you has a 9-second car. You can look in their signature. You can find you click on their profile because it's in their signature. You can figure out what they're running on their car and what they've been able to do with it. It's really easy to quickly see who you're talking to, find out what they've posted in the forum, and learn about them that way. There's a lot of benefits to spending time in there and learning about who you're talking to. Which again, yeah, you can do some of that on social media, but I think there's I think, like I said, I think there's just a way to connect with people in a different way in the forums that you just can't do on social media. So yeah.
I agree. So, Chris, when you look at, when you log onto Tuners and you look at the site, what are you the most proud of?
um, the fact that 24 years later, the site is still there and people are still using it. I mean, it's amazing to me. If you would have told me 24 years ago, um, that the site would be this big and people would find it to be valuable even today, and that we would have some of the same members participating today that we had literally 24 years ago. In a lot of cases, 23, because it was only a month into that last year. But that would have blown me away. That would blow me away. It's I'm proud of that. I'm also proud of just the launching pad that it's been for some of the businesses that have come about. Some of the fabrication businesses, some of the parts, that people are making, the services that people are providing. Um, it's all pretty pretty cool to be a part of.
For sure. That's definitely an understatement. So, Chris, what do you hope that the community takes away from DSM Tuners, even 10, 20 years down the line? You still hope that it's the central resource hub?
I would hope so. You never know. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years? I mean, with AI, coming onto the scene and changing things, I'm looking at ways to make use of that on the site. I'm working on some projects with that. But I would hope that it's still valuable. I would hope that it acts as a historical piece for people to kind of look back and absorb, what's been done over the years, and kind of pay attention to all the people that have come through, all the cars that have been built over the years. Yeah, it would be great. I would hope that it'll be around another 10 to 20 years, and that people will be able to benefit from all that, from all the knowledge, from all the information, from all the connections. Yeah, I definitely hope to see that. And I'll keep looking for ways to keep improving it, to try to make it more useful any way I can with technology. Again, maybe some AI stuff that I hope to push through at some point here. Yeah.
Well, Chris, at the end of these, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or a shout out to anybody who's helped them out along the way. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Oh, it would be, long list. I mean, all the moderators, especially the ones that have been here for so long, that are, some of I've been able to meet a few of them, especially at the shootout. We had a good time a while back. Just all the time and effort they put in to try to keep things clean and keep things organized and keep order. The site sponsors, the supporting vendors, the ones that kind of, and the supporting members. We have supporting memberships that people will pay for to kind of contribute to the financial side, to try to basically to keep the lights on, keep the server paid for, to keep development going on certain things, maintenance, updates, fix things when they break. There's a lot that goes into that, and those guys, the shops that have been involved for a while, it's really grateful for all that. All the veteran members who continue to share knowledge in the forum by posting articles, answering questions. All the members that have been around for a while and are active, or continue to kind of share the vision of what we're doing. All all the people who have DSM Tuners decals on their cars, wear DSM Tuners shirts, just representing the site, the community, that's really cool. That means a lot, especially when you see people out at the racetrack, and you look and you see that DSM Tuners decal. I mean, that's super cool. I show, I show my girls that kind of stuff, and they always get a kick out of it, because I'm just their dad, but they know I work on this stuff, and then they see pictures of these cars, or videos, these cars at the racetrack doing, about to run a quarter mile, and you see that sticker, I'll take them to the racetrack sometimes, and they'll meet people, and they get a kick out of it when people, find out who I am, and we start talking, and it's always funny to see that. But that stuff means a lot to me. It just shows that, that it, all that hard work, it really means something to people, so to see that is a big deal to me. And even hearing from those, like I said, those NABR guys who used to be a headache in the forum, but then they come back and they come in and reach out and give thanks, and it's all really appreciated, really appreciated. Oh, and I better thank my wife, because yes, I was working on this website a lot when we first got married. We got married in the year 2000, and it took a lot to get this website built. And I was working late nights for a long time, and even after the site was launched, I was always, dinner's done. I'll be back. I got to go do something. Got to go work on the site. And she's always been very supportive. Always very supportive. And she never lets me forget that, hey, that was my car. That was my car, right? Never lets me forget that, always wants me to let everybody know, because, hey, if it wasn't for her, the site wouldn't exist. Yeah, she's right. I always tell her, you're probably right. So, huge thanks to her.
Well, Chris, this is a long time coming. Thank you so much for coming on here and telling the story, not only of yourself, but of the DSM Tuners, which is, which I consider, like I said, a pillar of the community, really a centralized resource hub. So I can't thank you enough for coming on here and taking the time to do this.
Hey, well, I appreciate it. No, thank you for having me. It's always great to talk to people that are doing stuff. I respect what you're doing, with the podcast. I like what you're doing with MitsuTimes. Keep it up, man. Keep up the good work.
Will do. I'll keep it going as long as you keep it going.
There you go. We're in it.
All right, Chris. Well, it's been great talking to you.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.